Good evening, everyone. This is Laurie Wondra from YourLifeCore Radio, and I'm joining you from Minnesota. And with me tonight, I have my co-host, Mark Griffon, joining us from Arizona. Welcome, Mark.
Oh, thank you, Laurie. It's good to be back, and just looking forward to the full moon on Wednesday with our beautiful clear night skies we're famous for.
You are the million-star view that you have there in Arizona, and most people, or many people, are already feeling the intensity of the moon energy, and we're still a couple days away, but we can actually start feeling it like 48 hours before it hits that full moon, right? Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, typically it's a 3-day cycle, but we have the eclipse coming up, the lunar eclipse, and so the intensity of that as well. It just kind of reflects a lot of, if you want to say, influences to, once again, go into the shadow element of humanity.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about the shadow element, and tonight we're going to touch on it a little bit more. And with the intensity of the energy, I think it's just perfect timing. I've been seeing a lot of clients that are asking about purpose, and some of the eclipse energy that we experienced the beginning of the month as well as this month, and really for a lot of people 2016, it's about diving deeper. And some of that is that shadow energy, and some of it is diving deeper into just what's my purpose. And that's actually what our topic is tonight, is really investigating purpose and calling in a few of the archangels that oversee our life purpose, and those other ascended masters and other beings that can help us along that path. And earlier, a few episodes back, we talked a lot about what this year was about, moving into higher consciousness, community action, the I am energy, and then creating that space for the unknown. And we're going to talk tonight. We've got a great reference book that actually you brought to my attention a while back, and we both have that in front of us. It's called The Gene Keys by Richard Rudd. And we're going to talk about what our purpose is tonight. And before I do that, I want to invite Archangel Chamuel in, because Chamuel protects us and the world from lower energies. Not that I'm concerned about lower energies at all tonight, but to ask him to be the bouncer in our lives, but he also helps us seek out important parts of our life, such as our love relationships, our friendships, our careers, and actually some lost items too. I know myself and many of our listeners, we lose things, so it's nice to have somebody that we can call on to help. But he governs also and helps us discover our life purpose. And thus in those things helping us build solid foundations. So I often tell people, if you feel him around, if you ask him to join, or if you feel him around, you'll feel butterflies in your stomach. And sometimes that's also, we get butterflies in our stomach like if we're on a job interview or if we're starting something new. But it's also a symbol that he is there to guide and protect and kind of lead us on our way. So let's put a definition around purpose, Mark. What do you think about that? I know you have people too, when you're working with people in Sedona, that they're searching for something, and a lot of times it's for their purpose. And I always describe the purpose is it's really to experience, to love, to serve, to experience, to evolve, and to ascend. That's our purpose here. And then to use our skills, our gifts, and knowledge in all the areas that fulfill us. That's kind of my definition that I use. Do you have a different one that you share with people?
No, it would be along those same lines, but I simply refer to my choice of words as following soul's purpose, divine purpose of your life. And that's a rather broad statement or phrase, but it's what I personally utilize because of where I'm at, because I've been kind of following my chosen life path at an early age, in my 20s. So for me, it's the relating to others that are stuck in, let's just say, jobs they know that are unfulfilling, or relationships, or even places that they're living that they just don't feel are serving them. it's a little bit of a deeper exercise. And well, the phrases you use are really good, but we need to be practical in how an individual can perceive what their life purpose may be at the point that they're at in their life right now.
Right. And figuring that out requires you to go quite deep, because though my story is I was talking to the archangels when I was really young, and I knew I had this gift. As I grew up, I was told I was very different, than not everybody spoke to angels, and I hid it. I did whatever I could to hide that gift and to cover it up and mask it, and even as I moved into a corporate arena where I just knew things, I knew the outcomes of things, I really tried to mask that. And so we put up our own roadblocks along the way, and it wasn't until I was a little bit older, probably my mid to late 20s, that I was really starting to understand that I was creating those roadblocks and it was making it more difficult. And it sounds like you had an early in your 20s, young 20s, that you had this awareness that there was something greater, something deeper that you needed to investigate and to follow.
Yes, and I even had somebody tell me directly, point blank, that my life's purpose wasn't what I was presuming it to be. So I was a little different. I'm not something you could compare the average person to, but I also, because of the role I've chosen long ago, it's easier for me to facilitate others in understanding how they can find the beginning even of what they're really meant to be doing with their life. One thing, I think, I was thinking about this, and sometimes I was reflecting on my journey, and sometimes you have to do jobs that you don't really want to do. But what I've found is that, like, I was in the military, I was in home service for many years. It developed my people skills. And then through those jobs, especially when I moved to Sedona, I met people that were influential in starting this business. I met my webmaster through doing regular mundane work, and friends that I still have today that I wouldn't have crossed paths with. And I'm saying this because many people just want to up and leave their jobs, and maybe they're not finished with the synchronicities that are meant to happen on those jobs.
You bring up a good point, because I do see a lot of people that they're saying, I have to get out, I have to leave, and not only their jobs, I'm seeing people that are leaving their relationships, they're leaving their families, and that's created some confusion for them as to, what do they do with this urgency, and I check in with their angels and guides, but you're right, they might not be done with where they are. I know in my career, I started traveling the globe for my corporate work when I was just right out of college. So I was 21, 22, and I was traveling the globe. And as I started looking back over time, I always wondered why was the universe putting me in these different places. And at one point, I actually took a global map and I put dots all over and kind of did some sacred geometry and figured out where they were placing me at key points in time. And the people that I met along the way also, as you mentioned too, the people that I met along those global travels or those journeys that maybe weren't so pleasant, they all were a participant in my journey. And we've talked in I think it was the last show we did, we talked about how this is an experiential lifetime, so we have to experience things in order for us to figure out what we want. So
yeah, and it goes back to that this word that's kind of sometimes overused, misunderstood. It's karma, the karmic conditions that we are meant to balance first before we make those leaps into the fulfillment of life's purpose. And wouldn't this be a good lead into the gene keys?
Absolutely. That would be perfect in that. So,
so we've just mentioned it, but it's something anybody could access. Going to the website for gene keys and developing your profile just with your birth information. And the individual uses the I Ching as well to develop this roadmap. There's 3 sections to it, and they're called the prosperity, purpose, and relationship. 3 different pathways, much like the tree of life pathways. There's different characteristics along the way, but the reason why I wanted to bring this up now was because each let's say quality on these pathways has a shadow element. It has the gift that you benefit humanity and yourself with, and then it has the divine grace quality that you attain at the final stage of each one of these characteristic hubs. Therefore, it's related to the karmic conditions we have to address and resolve before we get into serving humanity in a sense with those divine gifts. You understand what I'm saying, I'm sure.
I do. And as I look at mine, before the show, Mark and I talked about pulling out our own profiles, and it actually, if you overlay it over the tree of life or the sacred geometry of the flower of life, and we talked about Metatron at our last episode, it does follow that path, and it tells you those challenges that you might face along the way. And this is just one tool, and it's a great tool because it has a nice, great big book that comes with to describe, but it also comes with a summary. And as I pulled mine out tonight and I looked at the top, like what's my life's work, and Mark and I talked a little bit before the show here. I looked at it, I said, my life's work, it's my third eye. it's that openness, it's being that server. And I think back to when I went to college for technology and moved up in the ranks of actually, developing code for computers and then moving into managing people. I moved down that path very quickly because actually doing the computer code, I was good at it because the mathematical part of it, but it didn't fit me, and I knew it didn't fulfill me. But it still took me a while to move into my natural gifts, and that also is shown here as to the roadblocks that I probably created myself. Judgment is one. I judge myself as, is this really true? Am I really talking to these angels, and are they giving me information, and some other things along the way. So and part of the Gene Keys also talks about the passage through the underworld, or talks about the shadow. So there's always the gene key, the genetic component of our DNA, that's the gene key, and the shadow element of it. So there's always, that's one of the laws of the universe, is you always have these opposites that you're working through. And if you can figure out the opposites, then you can move through them more quickly, or so I believe.
No, I agree too. It's, looking at my map, my layout, if I had this available in my 20s, life would have been a lot simpler.
Right, right. And before we dive in, I would totally agree with that. And this is relatively new, but because we're moving into more of a science era where we're more curious about our DNA and the scientific component, it fits a large part of the population that's looking for scientific knowledge. Other tools, and we've talked about this tool too, are working with a psychic medium or astrology or numerology. There are also some very good tools to help you on the path. But this is one I don't think many people know about yet.
No, they know it, and that's why it's nice to talk about it, because it's available, and even the book is not very expensive, and it to me, if a person's serious about what they're really meant to be doing with their life, I keep saying, your divine purpose or your soul's path, then you're going to make the effort. And you could, the other things are useful too. That's what we've been using really, and they do. Numerology and astrology, I know for a fact, they really show the direction you're going to be taking. They also show the challenges that come up each period, like we're talking about the eclipse. That's bringing up the shadow element in humanity and individually, and it's just a matter of where it hits your chart. It's landing with early degrees of Libra and Aries, and so it's, you can think about the theme of how do I relate and how do I care for myself, the balance between the two, which is the struggle for so many people, especially parents. How much of myself do I give, and is it healthy? How much myself do I give my friends, to my significant other? to my work, and still care for myself, still provide nurturing time and solitude for self. That's a challenge, a really, really big challenge right now. So the eclipse is kind of bringing that one up for all of us once again to sit with for this time period that we're in, and for a few weeks to follow.
Well, and that stillness is really hard to find right now. I mean, there's so much, there's political stuff going on, there's world events that are happening. So it's harder for people to find that total quietness, that they don't have to, that they're not bombarded with this information. So that's a...
Yeah, they just have to make the effort. On my tours, I tell my customers, I'm going to show you ways that you can quiet yourself, be still, but you have to give yourself that 20 minutes a day. And 20 minutes is reasonable. And if you don't have 20 minutes to give yourself, then you need to change your lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
It's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great practice. Well, I want to talk a little bit more. I want to go into a little bit in depth of the keys, these gene keys, because I see energy around people. If I look at someone's energy, I can see their aura. I can give them certain crystals to hold that contain codes and keys, and I can watch different symbolism or their light change around them. And one of the concepts of this book is that we all have these keys within our DNA, within our genetic makeup. And your genes hold that blueprint of your true nature, your true authentic self. But it's the environment that determines how those keys are activated and how you move forward on that. And we've talked a lot about it's an experiential universe. And so when we meet people or we experience events in our life, our keys or the codes within us are getting activated. They're getting poked and twisted and turned. But this is a tool that you don't, it gives you another definition. You can still experience things, but it helps you move through, like, what did the key just activate, so that you can utilize it to its best potential. And it's another way for you to communicate directly with your genes. And that might sound really odd, but it's to connect with your cellular structure, your genetic makeup, in order to adapt how they're functioning and affect your own transformation throughout your whole being. And so if you can do that more quickly without going through any painful events or any events that trigger you, or you have to experience them again and again and again and again because you're just not quite getting it, this is a great tool to get through that.
Oh, that's very well said and put, because as people look at these examples online, they're going to see the shadow element in every one of these characteristic hubs on these pathways, and they may find themselves stuck in every shadow of every hub. And the awareness, we've mentioned that before. It doesn't matter if you're bumping your head up against a wall. Have awareness that you're bumping your head up.
Right, right. And sometimes different people need different tools, or they need different messages. And so, I've had my astrology chart done, I've had numerology done, and I've had this holographic view done of my DNA, and they all tell me the same thing, but each of those gives me a little bit more. They each give me a little bit deeper in knowledge into my DNA, what makes me up on the energetic, and we have to remember too that we're multi-layered, and the multi-layers are the physical, the emotional, the spiritual, the etheric. I mean, we have many layers that we need to work through, and it can get frustrating if you're always stuck in one layer and you don't even know you need to go to the other parts, right?
It is. And you're talking about how the Gen X kind of is with this system, it can show you a pathway of life. There's many techniques that have been used for many years that show you how you can positively change the replication of DNA. There's ceremonies and other methods, I should say, that can enhance the positive replication of the things that that will help you move forward. And it's up to the individual to find what's benefit or what is most supportive for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the things that we're being challenged with right now is to open your heart to those shadow things, to really like step into your shadow energy. And I think your job and my job is to provide that support or provide those recommendations for tools to support people through that process.
We're examples. We both have gone through a lot of life challenges. We've come through the other end, kind of a better person. And there's a lot of people listening that experience that too. And there's others, and they also know there's a reason why people survive a health crisis, an accident, a divorce, a loss of a job, and why other people completely, they continue to go falling down into a pit and never come out of it. And that has to do with their will and their faith. And one of the things that maybe is appropriate to say now out of the Gene Key book that has reference, to all of us in finding a sense of meaning even for our lives, is that we're all faced collectively with this sensitivity to imperfection. And, we simply think that if I'm going to become a carpenter or if I'm going to become a psychic reader, I have to be perfect at the very start. And that leads to a lot of criticism and self-judgment. And in many cases, I think that's the reason why a lot of people say, I tried this and it didn't work, is because they never let go of the criticism and judgment. And successful people, we know this, we've kind of been this, they take a defeat, a loss, a failure as a learning tool. Mm-hmm. And that's going to happen when you start following your life's purposes. Almost like your soul's is refining you. So you've got this wide path when you start because you're really uncertain as to what you're wanting to do. And if you just keep paying attention to what does work, what doesn't work, how gracefully it works, how much of an alignment this happens, synchronistic flows, you really observe those things instead of letting your false ego say, I'm going to do this no matter what. Then that spirit and soul essence is going to kind of direct and guide you further and further towards that narrow middle path called the pathway of beauty on the tree of life.
And you're talking about the difference between the soul journey and your purpose for why you're here and living in that divine flow of the energy versus the human ego that says, this is fun, I like to do this, so yes. God darn it, I'm going to do this. Yeah,
that's the false ego. We all have it, and it always wants us to think that this is what we're supposed to enjoy and do. Some areas that are pretty obvious are the things we like to eat, the things we like to watch on TV or the internet, and let's just say interacting with in a room, intimacy things. Areas of intimacy. Those three big areas are places where we all kind of get carried away with false ego needs.
Oh, interesting. I agree. Until you just said that, I would agree with that. And with I'm just thinking where Venus is right now. Sorry, I'm picking up a couple of Ascended Masters that are coming in right now.
Are they bringing pizza and ice cream?
No, but it stopped me in my track because I'm like, okay, who are you? Who just joined the room here? But Venus is, so Aphrodite is joining us. So when we start talking about the feminine energy and the goddess energy, and you spoke a little bit about intimacy, the next couple of months, I haven't looked at astrology, we haven't talked about this, but what she's telling me in the next couple of months are pretty intense in this energy. So it's a way for us to really investigate that part of our shadow side and investigate that ego part of us.
Yeah, that's the theme of the lunar eclipse. The Aries energy is all about self, and the Libra energy is partnership and balance. And I'm sure that's why she's jumping in.
Yeah, well, she came in pretty strong. I want to go back to the the discussion that we were having about our soul journey and then our ego, our human ego part, and some of the roadblocks that I've seen, and because I can see the energy in people, I remind people that as our human body emits a range of very, very subtle electromagnetic energy. It's our bioelectric energy signature. It's really it's our imprint that we leave. We get up from a chair or we leave a room, we have a little bit of energy residue that follows us. And when that's off, that's actually also known as our aura, or the energy that we have around us. But when that's off, or it's not in alignment, that's where we start going like upstream. We're no longer in that flow. And that's where we start feeling off, where we feel, I know I can do it, I know I can do it, I know I can do it, but it's hard work to do whatever we're trying to do at that moment. And I know we've talked in the past about that would be the perfect time to just step back and just be in that place of stillness, right?
Yeah.
But if you've got tools in front of you, such as numerology or astrology or the gene codes or other things, that also would be a place to evaluate what's going on in your life. And those are all good tools. I want to just pause for a moment and remind people that part of our prime purposes here on Earth, too, is to really understand ourself and our internal source of being and how we interpret the world or how we exist in the world. So if we're always seeking out that help from someone else, that's also a roadblock. So if I'm always seeking out a numerologist or an astrologist or a psychic medium, I love working with people, but if you're always seeking out that external source, that also is going to create a roadblock for you.
Also, workshops and seminars, we know people who are addicted to those too.
They love the energy, and the energy's great, but it also can be a preventative for them to actually do the work. And so you talked about stillness, and that's what I'm getting. I'm sorry, I'm just listening to the angels that are coming in, and that stillness is really going to be important for us too in the April time period, because we're getting so much information that's coming into us that we have to be able to digest it, to really digest it, consume it, assimilate it, understand it. That's really our homework that we have ahead of us.
And what would a person that's listening, how would they know that, give us an example of how they would know if this assimilation is what's really occurring for them, or if it's a game of the shadow? What's the difference?
That's a great question. A game of the shadow, to me, you're talking about that's where the ego comes in. And to get to that quietness, to really be at that place of heart, because we have so much heart energy now, to really feel what it is, not think it, to really feel what it is. If you start thinking about things, then you're in the shadow, you're in the ego, because we're all heart operating now. We're all feeling and emotion operating right now.
You know what? That is exactly not what I would say, but that's exactly what I feel. I do a lot of, let's just say, we'll call them ceremonies, shamanic ceremonies, and I can, I definitely notice a difference when, you're sitting there in stillness and these stupid thoughts come in, like, what are you going to do tomorrow? Or like 5 different people in your life start popping up. That's the mind. That's the, how the mind, the ego is trying to control the process. And when you can be in that stillness and then just hear, I would say, a voice of more rational and reason, and it will tell you to do, it will suggest you do things, guide you to do things that you may not want to do. And then the human mind comes in and goes, oh, no, you don't need to listen to that. But for me, that's one way of telling the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And if you think about we're this big blob of energy that's moving through us in our physical and our you can think of our DNA as like superconductor of energy. And the mind wants to control all that energy. The mind wants to control it, direct it, understand it, get it to do what it thinks it should do. But our soul knows, and our heart energy knows, and that's the higher frequency. So if we can be in that pause place and just sit back with that heart energy, and that does take some practice.
It does. Everything we're talking about takes that 20 minutes a day. And as you develop the 20 minutes a day, then you may go into a half hour, and then you may give yourself like an hour 2 or 3 times a week, because it's a habit-forming energy, and your body, your emotional state, your mental state will appreciate it. Also, listening, you're mentioning listening with your heart. The body, too, will tell you. When you make a statement to yourself, and just watch how the body reacts. If it's, if it flows, if it's comfortable, then it's pretty much something you can pursue. Muscle testing, learning how to muscle test is helpful as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because of all the thousands and billions of receptors that we have in our body is probably the best tool if we don't let our mind kind of get in there and circumvent our progress in that. And just as a note that, these tools that we talked about, astrology or numerology or even the gene keys, all of those point the way to an answer, right? That's really what we're searching, is what's the answer. And all those tools, what we're talking about, are just tools that point us in a direction, but all of them really point us inward, which is truly where you'll always find the answer, is inward.
But that causes me to ask you another question. What about so many people with PTS? They may not even know how to get inward because of the traumas they've experienced.
Yeah, and that is some deep healing. That is where I would recommend that they do seek additional help to peel back those layers. So typically, if I experience a client that has suffered post-stress, I can see it's like layers of tinfoil is how I can best describe it, or layers of, it's like this shiny reflective, because they're not allowing anything in. It's like it's not like a mirror, but it's like the shiny material that just needs to be pulled away or peeled back. And so sometimes they need that help to help peel that back so that they can then get back to, who am I here without all this other protective layering on top of me? So you bring up a really good point, Mark. There are times that you do need a healer. You do need an external source of help, whether it's a medical doctor, a psychologist, a healer, someone in a field of expertise that can help you move through that. So, and I want to bring up too, they're reminding me is that because we're also multidimensional, it's not that it's one person that can help them with that. We're also moving into this time where we're very community based, and so it's probably more than one person, or it's more than one tool that will actually help get and shed through that.
That's correct, and of course I agree. This isn't, about stating opinions. It's just about bringing clarity to anyone who's listening, and even as we discuss this, bringing insights into our own path. We should maybe try to now talk about the basic 1, 2, 3 of a person that's, the example would be somebody stuck in a job they hate, and they feel like their family life's going nowhere. I just had a friend visiting who was kind of in a situation in her marriage, and she decided to take matters in her own hands and started looking for other places to live, doing shamanic work on herself, and it actually caused her husband to make a big 180 turnaround. So expecting others to change for you isn't going to happen. But if you're in one of these dead-end situations, first see what you can do. And a lot of times it is doing some deep ceremony with a qualified person, and turning around the situation so that you don't have to run away from it.
Right. And you're talking about the 4 steps to Ascension, correct? When you talk about the 4 steps. And that first step that you just talked about is the accountability. And that's really doing the work. It's stopping your old patterns. It's letting go of those patterns. It's stepping back and observing or assessing or discovering, you can use any of those words, the things that don't fit anymore, and how you are in that space, and taking accountability for that and some decisions about what direction or what step, what direction are you going to now face? Because in some cases it's literally facing a different direction and moving forward on that.
Yeah, and you're going to have to overcome the fears and anxieties of that moving forward. Going back to this thing about perfectionism and feeling we need to do it perfectly the first time, and as opposed, and just, we have to get to a place of, and I was told this a few nights ago within my meditations, I have to get to a place of full acceptance of myself, and then fully accept anything that happens to me. So I'm not giving it an emotional charge. And I'm watching how anything that, what's come up in the last few days, not giving it that emotional charge and just going and interacting with a person or just looking at it as an event. And it does make a big difference when you could start approaching any part of your life with that attitude.
Right. To not react, and you've been with me sometimes when there could be an emotional discharge, an emotional reaction, and I always tell people that's a sign of moving through higher consciousness, and that evolution is that when you don't react to that you can observe it, you can suspend it and work through it.
Yeah,
so
that was fun.
And
your last visit, we were at one of the vortexes, and you got
I got a phone call.
Oh, yeah, emergency at home. And, it's kind of funny, to the listeners, but for about a minute you kind of, did a bit of a meltdown, and then you kind of grabbed on, you let your higher self, that strong line of force come through, and it just, you allowed that to take over, and everything resolved itself. But it was, to me it was comical, watching Wonder Woman, just, go back to the 10-year-old girl for a minute.
I just simply had to sit down and breathe for a moment. But it does. But I don't mind sharing that at all, because it feels so good when I'm confident now that I know I have those skills. I know I have those tools, and so there's a knowing to that, and I can take that nanosecond or that a few second that. That's the human part of it before then the spiritual part kicks in.
It's the old part of ourselves. That's all that's happening.
Yeah. So let's talk about the second one. It's that honor and honoring ourselves.
Okay.
And
got a good one.
Go ahead.
All right. So I do this for a living now here, and I'm really, really stressing it with everyone. You can have an experience in Sedona. You can kind of take the experience back for you, but you have to replicate it wherever you're at. And so the experience is going into nature, going to that sweet spot that makes you feel joy, comfort, peace, support, protection, and just sitting there, just being with it. Because that vibration of nature from the ground, the earth, that's very healthy for the brain. It's very healthy for the heart. And so if you have a very mental existence, if you just have a lot of nervousness, these things will help to quell that. And then as your brain patterns shift, you'll be able to think and have more of that divine rational, those divine rational inspirations come through. And that is a great way of developing your self-understanding and awareness of the direction you should be taking with your life.
Mm-hmm. And that's really key, is that pause, and the place that you're pausing is really honoring, because so many of us have we might experience situations in life like an event, and we ignore it, or we stuff it, or we avoid it. And this is about just being in it. I call it standing in the fire. You stand in the fire and you honor it, and then that's what allows you to work through it. And so there's no better place than I think is being out in nature, in that quiet place, that connection with Mother Earth.
because you're also just with self. You're just with, you're allowing all these different dimensional parts of yourself to be with you without distraction. And leave the phone in the car, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Which is easier. I mean, that's tough for people because they use it for cameras and everything else, right? But I've seen a few people almost fall off the trails because they're looking down instead of watching where they're walking. So that place of honor, and for me also that place of honor is getting enough sleep, eating healthy, getting enough fluids in your body, taking time to feed your mind as much as your soul. All those things that maybe you've been putting off for a while or avoiding or just haven't taken the time to do that. It's a big category. Clients that I work with, I ask them really to spend some time and think about what do you do? What does it mean to honor yourself and develop some practices around that?
I also agree. One of these little statements that I like to tell people, and I do myself, is it's a daily affirmation in a sense, but I just call on my spirit and soul essence to provide a synchronistic flow of events through my day's journey that leads to my highest good and outcome.
I love that. Could you repeat that again, Mark?
Yeah, I call upon my spirit and soul essence to create a synchronistic flow of events that leads to my highest good and outcome for that day. And I also say, fulfilling my divine purpose for the day and the days to follow. I kind of can play around with it a bit depending on what the situation is. But when you do that, then the next step is having the discipline to follow the direction of those synchronicities. Now, I'll give you a quick example. I live in a small town and I'm self-employed, so there's days when nothing's going on. And something tells me I want to go to the gym, but it says, no, wait. And so you do something else and then go to the gym at 4 o'clock, for example. And then I go to the gym and there's somebody there I haven't seen in months. And they may have a particular message or just talk about a topic that simply, it triggers something in myself of what I've been thinking about and musing over for days. And that's how the universal synchronicities work. I'm in a community where so many people are in that flow. It's very easy to participate in. If you're in a bigger city, it still applies. Something may say, go get gas now, go to the coffee shop now, go to the grocery store now, even though you've been thinking about doing it all day. Something continually puts that off because it aligns you. So if you call on this, you make that command to this higher part of yourself, it's almost like you're acknowledging its input. It's the boss, and we're kind of the servant. And this thing with human will is kind of it's misconceived because our will is to follow the human path. I mean, our will is meant to be following our divine path, or choosing not to. That's right. The essence of using our willpower.
Well, your example about going to the gym and seeing someone that you haven't seen for months, that's a perfect example about how the universe provides the opportunity to unlock some codes within you that you didn't even know needed to be unlocked. It's that human interaction, or it's that event interaction that also spawns this next step or next action that we've been talking about. So you're tuned in and listening for what the universe has already decided to put in front of you.
Yeah, and it took years of practice. I'm living in a community where it supports that, and by that I mean it's a consciousness level. It's not a bunch of people saying go and do this, Mark. It's just that you're around similar levels of awareness in the individuals you interact with and just live with. And you may not have that where you are at, but you nonetheless can call on that divine source, because you may go to a gas station and the person behind the counter is tuned in and they're just doing what they're supposed to be doing with their life.
Right. Well, let's, I want to make sure that we've got time to get to the next two. So the next one is humility. That's being humble, modest, an estimate of one's own importance. And in so much of our society as we rank or we class or we grade ourselves, but this is where we are humble and we allow the ego to simply fall away. We find, I call it, it's that rawness to us of our being. It's that willingness to be raw and open and authentic, kind of stripped down of everything, because that's that place that things can get rebuilt then.
And it also, in my case, the humility was accepting occupations that I was way overqualified for, and maybe personally struggle with getting up and going to do every day. But it opened up doorways that I would never, doorways I would never found if I wasn't willing to do that. So the humility is being willing to do what's asked of you from that, kind of like a divine guidance. And it really starts out as something you probably wouldn't want to do in your manifestation board.
I would agree with that. And what comes to mind is, there's a lot of teens, or young adults, I should say, leaving college right now, that are right in the middle of this transformation energy, and they're looking for their jobs and their career, but the universe is forcing them to take different steps or different jobs along the way. And I talk to parents almost daily that they're struggling with because their children won't just jump into jobs. They're waiting, or they're living at home. So it's not just an adult or a baby boomer or an elderly age problem. It's this particular one, being humble or humility, is hitting everybody. And I think it has something to do with the 2015, 2016 energy. It's just hitting a bigger population, I think.
Yeah, and it's the internet, I think, is a big part of why it's affecting so many people, because there's so much available information, and it's not that it's misleading, as like the millennials say. It's not like it's misleading the millennials, but it's causing a mindset that I should be able to manifest what I want and be able to retire in my mid-30s. It's that's where it's misleading. There's still the karma. There's still the path of discipline, because if without those things, then you may be able to get what your goal is, and then you're still miserable, and your life still isn't functioning the way it's really meant to.
I would agree with that, because you can practice the laws of manifestation, but if it's not part of your journey plan, then you aren't going to manifest that. Yeah. So I agree with that. I agree with that. And there's been some recent, I'm just curious, there's been some recent publications about some authors that don't agree with the concept of karma. And I do agree with karma, just because I see past lives in people. That's part of what I do with people, is I see some things that they maybe left behind or didn't complete in past lifetimes that they're having to complete in this lifetime. So we're working through stuff.
Yeah, I've had things come up just recently about wounds in ways I was tortured in past lives from being a warrior, and you just don't realize how many of these imbalances and disharmonies still exist within yourself. I'm going to kind of quote two people that I like to listen to. David Wilcox. Mm-hmm. He feels karma is anything that's out of alignment with the universal love and compassion.
Yep.
Matt Kahn says karma is our soul just trying to get us to change.
Yeah, and I would agree, and I love listening to both of them, actually, and I agree with the concepts that we do have to listen. And as we talk about these different tools that we've talked about tonight, the universe provides us with so many different mechanisms and ways and people around us to get us to listen. So to move forward, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. So the last one in the 4 steps of Ascension is serving. And this really becomes the difference between being in service and just simply being service. The first is more a doing role, and people can be of service, like a doctor, dentist, a healer, where they provide a service. But this is different. This is being in service. This is a daily living and breathing and how you present yourself to the world. And that's a tough one too for people to understand that. And I think you and I talked earlier in this call about we're seeing more people that are stepping out and wanting to be healers and wanting to help move the communities. And that difference of helping others versus just living that service is, I don't want to say difficult for some to understand, but it's a roadblock, just like the being humble is a roadblock for many.
Yeah, and okay, well, I'll kind of throw out another example. So let's say Millennial A wants to be a healer and leave their job. I would say to Millennial A, why don't you be a healer at your job?
Exactly.
So you don't have to make this a full-time occupation. It takes years to get to a place where you can sustain yourself doing this as a service, but you are placed where the Creator wants you to be. So don't go running away from it. Seeing how you can transform the people around it, the conditions in it. How the hell is the corporate world going to change this if everybody who's decent and thoughtful and caring and compassionate leaves it?
You've been hanging around me too long, Mark, because I'm sure you and I have had this conversation. I mean, for years, I thought I should leave corporate America. I really struggled with that until the messages I kept getting were the universe is going to put me where the universe wants me to be, and that is being that healer within a corporate setting. And I'm graced in my life because I can do that, and I also can work individually with clients. And I'm very well taken care of by the universe in being able to work both those sides. But there are so many people that they want to like throw up their arms and leave that environment that they're actually supposed to be in. Yeah. And doing the work there.
I've been there. I've felt that way many years, and I would always see the Spirit would always show me the benefits that I'm providing people that I interact with, and they would tell me. I would get feedback. So that was just my personal struggle with my false ego that I should be doing something else. But it's led me to where I'm at now, and I can assure everybody who is, let's just say the millennial generation, it's not going to take 10 or 20 or 30 years like it took the boomers. You'll be able to get through it a lot quicker, but you still got to put in the effort, the discipline, the patience. These are divine qualities, and you're not just going to get your postgraduate degree, going to night school for a week.
I would agree with that. So that serving or being in the state of service, and that's a daily being in that place. I call it, that's the biggest center of that heart love. That's being in joy. It's contributing the energy of just love for no other reason than just to contribute the energy of love.
Yeah, that's Matt Kahn saying too. Whatever you face it with love, and you'll see that it doesn't repeat itself.
Right. I've stood up in front of many groups and just opened up that love energy, and that is just that place of serving. You can call it blessing, you can call it sharing energy, you can call whatever that place of joy and compassion is, but it's different than the actual doing, where many of us, I think, define that, what is service. And to do any of these, it really requires you to understand your I am energy. Who are you at the core? So you really have to understand, before you can honor yourself, you have to understand, who am I here? What's the I am energy? Before you can move into that accountability, you have to understand the humility. And then, of course, that last step of just being of service, or being service. You really have to understand that deep, deep, deep I am energy.
You do. It takes time. It takes practice. It's not going to take as long as it did in the 70s, 80s, or 90s. I keep saying that as well. It can happen a lot quicker, but it still requires these steps. Otherwise, you could be in total false ego with all these gifts, and it'll just implode upon you.
Right. Right. So, as we begin to wind down, do you have any golden nuggets? You always have really good nuggets for us. Do you have anything additional tonight that you want to share?
Let me muse for a second. Strategic pause of silence to get everybody on the edge of their seats. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. When we follow our true life's purpose, you have to be willing to change whatever it wants you to change. And that it could be a full spectrum of habits and characteristics and sometimes physical location. But you have to be willing to change if you're just going to play a game with yourself. Because once again, you think the outcome is going to be a graceful, fulfilling life. That change is going to be simply required because it's like an energy, like a law of physics. The momentum of the current life is not, it will continue taking it down that path. So the only thing that's going to change that momentum is your will, and your determination.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely true. We're self-directing. I want to call in, when we started, we called in Archangel Shamuel, and I just wanted to acknowledge his presence here, but we are also joined with Aphrodite. There are some other archangels and ascended masters that also are overseers of our life purpose. And Mark, I know you've worked with some of these. We have Archangel Michael, always. He's one of my favorite. We've talked about him. Saint Francis, Kuthimi is one, Thor, Bridget, Saint Germain, very, very powerful. When we talk about life changes, which can be different than our life purpose, it can be the steps along the way as Mark, as you said, along our journey path. Archangel Jeremiah, Cordelia, those are some really good resources to call in. And then the deities or the ascended masters that help us remove any obstacles. So Tara, the healer,
Ganesh.
Ganesh, of course, I love Ganesh. There is some, pardon?
Kuan Yin's good too.
Kuan Yin, yes. Some amazing energies that we often forget to call them in from outer dimensions or beyond our physical being. And so I just wanted to take a moment and just share some of my favorites with our listeners and to remind them that not everything that helps us or not everything that assists us can be seen. It can definitely be felt, but not everything can be seen by the naked eye, and just to be reminded that we always have all these wonderful resources that are around us and available to us.
I totally agree, and if you don't remember any of those names, just say, whatever angel, master, or goddess can help me with this issue I'm facing.
Right, right. And they will come and help, and you can't ask too often because that's their job. They want to step in and help. So with that, as we wrap up tonight, I want to thank you so very much, Mark Griffon from Sedona. And Mark, as a reminder to our listeners, you have a fabulous business. That's how you and I met in Sedona. You run Sedona Mystical Tours, where you take people out on the land to the vortexes and other spiritual places, and just magic happens. So thank you for the work that you do there, and if our listeners have a chance to get out to Sedona, certainly look Mark up, Mark Griffon of Sedona Mystical Tours. And I'm Laurie Wondra of YourLifeCore, and I'm here in Minnesota. And before we close out, I just want to acknowledge from all the archangels, the ascended masters, the other angelic beings or other energetic beings that have joined us tonight, and all of their helpers. May all dimensions of your energy, your physical, mental, emotional, etheric fields be fully opened and now be infused with sustainable frequency of love, peace, joy, happiness, abundance, and compassion. And may you call on all the helpers of the universe to support and help you as you move on your journey. And with all those universal helpers, we send you beams of love and light, and enjoy this full moon and the lunar eclipse that we experienced this week. Good night.
One more thing, Laurie.
Yes.
In the spirit of full transparency, would you mind revealing to your listening audience the real reason why Aphrodite showed up?
I don't know. Why?
She wanted to find out a little bit more about your sexy co-host. By the way, my life's purpose is sacred trickster.
It is. It is. It is. So,
You weren't expecting that, were you?
No, I was not. Thank you.